to Dr. Bobby Conversation. Today I want to talk about this new life on planet Earth, and with that said, we're living in some perilous times. And we're living in a season that we've never seen before. We're experiencing things that we've never experienced before. And I want to say to all of the people that really are believers, we're going to come into a season and a time that's fastly approaching that God must become your Jehovah Jireh. Because we are living in a world that's changing, that's absolutely moving swiftly. So I want you to like, share, subscribe, and follow us into this new venture of the seven separations of Abraham. The seven separations of Abraham's is important because us as believers, we come to the realization that we want God to provide for us, but we want Him to see what we need and then provide even if we don't ask. Why do we use Abraham? Because Abraham was the father of faith, and everybody that walks in faith needs to understand that he is the pattern of spiritual growth. So Abraham made seven critical decisions in his life before God ever became his Jehovah Jireh. Jesus is the personification of faith. In other words, Jesus became faith. That's why we believe in him. And that's why we walk by faith and not by sight, because we come to a place that we must repent from dead works. That means our own effort, our own labor, and move into having the faith of God and living out of God's faith and begin to walk towards God in our understanding. This is the reason why we have to grow. This is the reason why we have relationship with the body of Christ, because we cannot walk in this reality all by ourselves. There are seven critical separations that must be experienced in order for you to know that God is your provider. Now, what I'm going to talk about here is coming from the book of Genesis, and it's chapter 12, 1 through 22. So I say to you that we're not going to read all of the scriptures, but if you want to follow the story, it's in Genesis 12, 1 to 22. We're going to start by reading Genesis 12, 1 to 3. It says, "Now the Lord has said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show you." So the walking by faith is that you don't necessarily know where you're going. You just know you hear the word of God and you obey it. And then he went on to say, "I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing." So everybody that's walking in God want to be a blessing to others. That's why we have Abraham as our father of faith. And he says, "I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse him that curse thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed." That's why we need to follow Abraham. So when we see that, we understand that here is the pattern, and the seven separations of Abraham is important for all believers, and you'll understand why you go through what you go through. In other words, you'll find out that this walk of God is not just you get saved and then wait to go to heaven to be blessed. In other words, you're born again by faith, so you learn to walk by faith and not by sight, because it is a whole new way of living. This is a new life on planet Earth. And we begin to realize that in these exercises, we understand that we are walking now as the friend of God. Hello, friend. You are my friend. I'm a friend of God. Therefore, we both a friend of God, how would you say to the audience that Abraham did something that all of us must go through? And I can actually say that you probably have experienced some of these.
Yes, I did. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. Well, first of all, going back up to Abraham was the father of faith, which means that Abraham was the example of faith that that's in the Bible, and he was a pattern, like I said, for spiritual growth. So, in order for us to have spiritual growth, we had to have the faith as he had to believe God. If we heard God, we believe him, and we will do what he tells us to do as being obedient to what he said. And said we must walk by faith, which means we must live by faith, because he became faith. Jesus became faith. Said the personification, and the first word in that is person. He became the person of faith. Jesus became the person of faith. And therefore, we have to be be a person of faith.
Right.
And as it in Romans 14:19 said we must walk by faith and not by sight. So Romans 14:19 tells us, as it is written, I made thee a father of many nations before him who he believed, even God, who quickened the dead and called those things that are not as though they were. So we had to call those things that are not as though they were, as to having the faith.
So God actually is saying that he actually causes us to walk by faith in something that he already knows that's where we're going.
Exactly.
So what he had to do is leave his country and proceed to a place that God was going to show him later.
As I did. I had to leave my small town called Washington, Georgia, because I had to go by the seventh separation of Abraham.
So that means that the seed of Abraham is a many-membered body.
Many-membered body.
In other words, that's the Christ. It said the seed of Abraham is a many-membered Christ, that is to possess all things in heaven and in earth. Let's say that again, because people think it's just heaven.
No,
but we are to inherit all things, both in heaven and in earth. So we go on to understand Abraham made 7 critical decisions in his lifetime.
Yes.
So this thing is not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yes, it is.
So we actually walk in these decisions throughout our lifetime. And we understand that the pattern of faith is for every believer. Not just one.
Every believer.
Not just Abraham.
Every believer.
Not just Paul.
Every believer.
Every believer. And here's what you have to understand. After the 7th separation from Isaac, in Genesis 22, God revealed himself to Abraham as Jehovah Jireh.
Right.
And Jehovah Jireh means God will see and he will provide. And we go on to understand that he provided, and it's a complete, unlimited provision if you walk through these separations. Because 7 is the number of perfection.
Right.
Meaning as you walk into, by obedience, into these separations, and these are the things that you can look forward to as God sees what you need. He provides before you ever ask. So we go on and says, now you have to separate yourself. And see, here's what's so important about separation. Because every separation brings you into a new revelation. And the new revelation brings you into a place that you see God in a different light. And it causes you to build an altar and worship at that place. Now, the truth of the matter is you don't stay there, because worship leads to a place of fulfillment. Abraham would make a separation, and Jehovah would speak to him, prompting him to build an altar and worship. Abraham, being the father of faith, says all of these who walk by faith must separate themselves from these 7 places.
Yeah.
First of all, your country.
Right.
And your country is the teaching and the traditions that say you can't have the things of God now. So most people say you can't get the blessings of God until you get to heaven, but that's what you have to understand. Heaven came into us in spirit form and caused us to understand that it causes you to leave your immediate locale, go to another place, and sometimes that might have been a different church, that might have been a different posture, and your surrounding.
You had to leave from your familiar. So he take you from your familiar. So that is your first separation.
That which is around, that which you're familiar with.
Which you are familiar with.
And one of the reasons I believe that happens that way is because if you never leave your familiar, you never learn anything new.
You would not.
So if people really want to grow, you really can't grow in the place where you're so comfortable. So God have you to leave your father's house, leave your mother and your father. Sometimes you have to leave the Baptist to go to Pentecost.
Wherever he leads you, that's what you have to do.
And so what you understand is a land that is governed by the power of darkness. So if you're enlightened, then you have to walk in the light where you went. Also from his kindreds. And that means our natural and spiritual family.
Oh, let me back up a little bit with the country. When it said teaching and tradition that say you can go so far, but no further. So the teaching and tradition will say that you can't go no further when you are led to leave the country out of the familiar place. So that's why you got to make sure you're hearing God.
Because when you say that which is familiar, they're doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results.
And you cannot get different results.
So I've heard someone say that's the definition of insanity. That you keep doing the same things over again, expecting to get a different result. You can't.
No way.
So it goes on and says, now you have to leave your kindred.
I had to leave mine.
And you leave your kindred because it's our natural, our spiritual family. So you really are separated from them unto a new.
Yeah.
You could be separated from one family of God that you were birthed into another to experience something new. It goes on to says that we have to begin to realize that our Father's house is a strong tie. In other words, flesh ties are hard to break away from.
Right.
It's to the land of our nativity. It could be the church, the system, the doctrine under which we were born, and it keeps many from pleasing God. So people have to make up in their mind that when God apprehends them to run after him, it may take you from those that say they love you.
Right.
And some of them that say they love you, they really want to love you away from you obeying God and think they're doing you a favor. Not only that, but the third thing is you have to come out of Egypt. Now, when you come out of Egypt, you have to understand that's a picture of the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life. In other words, not only do we leave Egypt, but we got to get Egypt out of us. Because we have the practices of what we did before we left. When we left, we still have the practices inside of us. So if we don't learn something new, we keep practicing the same thing, even in the new place.
That's right.
So we come to the realization that we have to understand that 1 John 2:15 and 16, it says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, because if any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Now, I have to understand what that means. That means for all that is in the world, the surrounding atmosphere,
right,
that's in the realm of natural man.
Mm-hmm.
It says, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but of the world.
Right.
So if it's not of the Father, that means you got to come out of that. Egypt is a place of bondage and servitude.
Mm.
That means to me that if we find ourselves in a place that we are actually functioning as a slave, that's a place of bondage.
That's bondage. That is bondage.
You can't find out who you are. And if you leave, one of the things that you have to understand, and I tell everybody, when you go from one place to another, don't take nobody with you. Because what you do, if you leave and you take somebody with you, you want the comfort of the one that you leaving because you got somebody you relate to.
Right.
So if you keep relating back to where you were before you came out, you really didn't leave because it's still working in you.
It's still working in you. That's right.
So the next thing, the fourth thing you have to leave is Lot. And Lot is a carnal one who walks with us. They want God's presence, gifts.
Yes.
But they don't want his present, worship.
Yeah.
They are along for the ride, desiring only the benefits, but despise the responsibility. Most people want the things of God,
but not the responsibility.
But not the responsibility. And I believe that anybody that's walking with God has to walk in the responsibility of the place they go to.
Right.
So everybody can be great because everybody can serve.
Everybody can serve.
So in walking by faith, that means you need to be serving others as you're serving God. Because the body of Christ is Christ in the earth. So if you're not serving people, if you're not loving people, if you're not exchanging with people, then you're only exchanging with your own ideas. So when you leave Lot, and here's what it says in Genesis 13, 8 through 11. One of the things it says, and Abram said unto Lot, because they was having difficulty.
Right.
He says, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, between my herdmen and thy herdsmen, for we are brethren. So this is a situation that there's a clash between the followers of Abraham and the followers of Lot.
Right.
So both of them had possession. But he said, let there not be strife. Is it not the whole land before you separate yourself? He told Lot, he said, now you can look out over the whole land. He said, now I'm going to give you a choice, but we got to separate because there's a clash. He says, now you can look out before you of all the plains. He says, now if you choose the right hand, then I'll choose the left. If you choose the left hand, I'll choose the right. In other words, Abraham trusted God, but Lot trusted his eyes. So what Lot did is looked out over the plain, and Lot lifted up his eyes, and behold, all the plains of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Sodom and Gomorrah is a beautiful place until God visited.
Right.
Your life might be a beautiful life until God visited you. What you had before you met God might have looked real good, but when God blew on it, when God visited with you, you found out that you was living a good life, but a life that was not God's life. So when you go, leave Lot behind. And it says, the land of Egypt, as thou comest to Zorah. So he had to leave the place of Sodom and Gomorrah. He had to flee, but when he went there, it looked good.
Right.
So a lot of people don't realize that what looks good to you now may not be as good later on. So you need to obey God. And in obeying God, you come to realize that you walk into this new place. You walk by faith and not by sight. You go into a place that you've never been before, and you get there. And one of the things that really is upsetting when you leave where you had wealth And now you're going to a place that you desire only to get wealth. That's what people need to realize. Don't let money lead you. Because what you have to understand is that a desire to get wealth, Genesis 14, 21 through 14. So what we really begin to realize is this is a critical decision. Because God will never restore unlimited provision unto those who love money. I didn't say the ones that make money. I said those that love money. Because you can love money and don't have any.
It's true.
And that's one of the reasons why you don't have any, because you love it.
Because you love it.
It goes on to say, the man of faith cannot be bought. He or she is under exclusive contract to Jehovah. As the bond slave of Christ, we cannot become the possession of another. Right. In other words, I can only serve God. Why? It's because I know God is going to be my provider.
Right.
I will not allow myself to be bought. In Genesis 14, 22 through 23, it says, and Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the most high God, the possessor of heaven and earth, and I will not even take a shoelace from you. Why? Because if I do that, then you'll say, you made Abraham great. In other words, whenever you walk by faith and not by sight, you have to be careful how you get the resources that you get, because God will not allow another to get glory for your life.
That's right.
It goes on and says, the love of money is a heart desire to get more than to give. The man of God is not greedy for gain.
No, sir.
And cannot be bought.
Will not be bought.
So what you realize is that for the love of money, here's in 1 Timothy 6 and 10. This is why one of the things that most people don't want to talk about money, but I feel like that people need to understand God's economy. God's not against you having money.
No, he's not.
But what he's trying to get you to understand, if you do it the wrong way, he has to bring you down. Because you can get caught up, because the love of money is the root of all evil. In other words, if you let money drive you, you'll start doing evil things, which some coveted after. They have erred from the faith and have pierced themselves through with many sorrows. In other words, I know there are situations in my life where if I would have accepted what somebody offered, I could be rich and miserable. But I'd rather be content in what I do. Why? It's because money is the answer to all things. But it's also the thing that can take you away from God.
Yes.
So you also have to be separated, the sixth, from Ishmael. And Ishmael is a product of the flesh, and it's a man-made attempt to bring forth the promise of God. In other words, your Ishmael is a good idea.
Right.
And a good idea may look good in the beginning. It's an idea from the old nature, Adam, trying to bring it over into the new nature of Christ. And you understand that it's the fruit of human wisdom. That's what we're seeing in America now. The fruit of human wisdom is coming down. Nobody can stop it.
That's right.
Because God says, even in the first commandment, thou shalt have no other God before me.
He said he's a jealous God.
Absolutely. So what people have done is actually gotten themselves riches without God.
Without God.
So God has to bring it down to he's not a God of his word. So Ishmael is the sixth separation in the walk of Abraham, and it's the number of 6. It's the number of man.
Right.
So if you really want to understand that 6 is the natural man obsessed with getting it without God. It is the Antichrist, the other than Christ. It's not the devil, it's the other than Christ.
Other than.
If it's not in Christ, it's another. So what you have to realize is that all of a sudden we begin to realize in Genesis 21:10, it says, wherefore she said unto Abram, cast out this bondwoman from my son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac, because it's a product of the flesh and it's a good idea, but it's not a God idea.
But not God.
It says, neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all the children of God. It says, in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And Isaac is the seventh separation of Abraham. And everybody will come to that place and they will understand that this is the ultimate test. When you come to this test, the way you will know it is because it is the promise has become a reality. Oh my God, you have reached the goal.
Yes.
You have come to the place that you walk by faith and not by sight, and God brought you into a wealthy place. Then Abraham had held it in his arm. He watched it grow. Now God demands that which he loves. See, God gonna always come to you for that which you love. And that which you love is that which you will give your life for. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So God gave his very best.
Right.
So I want to share with you that not only did God give his very best, but he's going to require that of you. So it goes on and says, do we love the promise of God more than the God of the promise? So people fall in love with the stuff and fall out of love with God.
Yep.
Because they begin to love the stuff greater than the God that gave the stuff. In other words, ministry is the same way. Sometimes ministries are so in love with ministry, they fail to spend time with God. See, because if you're a minister, you really need to spend time with God in the morning. And you need to do it all the time. You can't just study to be able to minister to people without ministering to God first. It goes on to says that, do you love what you do greater than you love the God that give you the breath and the life to do it? It goes on and says, God is a God that requires you to worship him. This is worship at the purest sense. This is pure worship. Give all that God asks for. When you give all that God asks for, the question is, do you love God or do you love the promise? And it goes on to Genesis 22:1-5. It came to pass after that these things that God did tempt Abraham.
Yes.
And said unto him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here am I. And he says, take now thy son, thy only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of these mountains, which I will show thee. In other words, he says, I want you to take that which you love, and I want you to go to a mountain that I will show you. And what I want you to do is sacrifice him. In other words, God brings you to a place that he says that you must go to the ultimate place. And Abraham said unto the ones that with him, you wait here while we go yonder, and we will return. And Genesis 22:14, and Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh. And it is said today that is the mount of the Lord. So what we have to understand, in this new life on planet Earth, we are going to have to trust in the Lord. With all of our heart, lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path, and he will become your provider. I'd like for you to like, share, subscribe, and follow us into this new adventure of God becoming your Jehovah Jireh today.
See you on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. for a live conversation with Dr. Bobby via Zoom. We look forward to seeing you. Have a blessed day, and thank you for your attendance.